Welcome to this video. On this video I'd like to talk about the warriors, macros, glyphs and talents. So let's begin. First we have Juggernaut. It reduces your charge cooldown to 12 seconds. Then we have Double Time. It gives you one additional charge, stack of charge. And then we have Warbringer. It roots the target when you charge him. Then we have Enraged Regeneration. Gives you 10% health and then another 10% over 5 seconds. Then we have Second Wind. Gives you 3% health per second if you're below 35%. Impending Victory heals you for 20% and has a 30% cooldown. It replaces Victory Rush and it refreshes when you kill an enemy. Then we have Staggering Shout. It roots the target for 5 seconds if he's snared. And then we have Piercing Howl. It's an AoE snare. And then we have Disrupting Shout. It's an AoE interrupt. Then we have Blade Storm. It does damage, and when you use Blade Storm, you're immune to movement and impairing effect, and also loss of control. Then then we have Shockwave. It stuns all the targets for 4 seconds in front of you within 10 yards. Then we have Dragon Roar. It does decent amount of damage and knocks down the enemies for 0.5 seconds. Then we have Mass Spell Reflection. It gives all your party raid members spell reflect for 5 seconds. Then we have Safeguard. It replaces Intervene, and when you use it, it removes all movement impairing effect upon you. Then we have Vigilance. It gives a protective gauge on your raid member, and reducing hit damage taken by 30% for 12 seconds. During the duration, Vigilance, your taunt has no cooldown. So when you use Vigilance, your taunt has no cooldown. Then Avatar gives 20% additional damage. And then we have Bloodbath. It deals an additional 30% damage as a bleed over 6%. And then we have Stormbolt. It's a ranged stun, and if the target is permanently immune to stun, it does 500 weapon damage instead of 125. So the first setup is for just basic damage, and I usually use this in 3s and sometimes in 2s if I'm going with a double DPS. So I go with Juggernaut, and then obviously Second Wind because it's just top healing with between all these three. And then I go with the Root or Piercing Howl. It depends, because you can use Piercing Howl if you're going versus a hunter and you want to slow his zoom, or you can just go Staggering Shout to be able to root a warrior away from your healer or your partner. But I rarely use Disrupting Shout because it just shares the same cooldown with my Pummel, so I really don't want, it's just a waste of talent. And then I go with Blade Storm just for the massive increase of damage, and it's an OP cooldown. And then I really don't use Shockwave in this situation because usually I play with other classes that do have stun. But it depends on the situation. So if you're playing with a Druid, sometimes you need to take a Shockwave because he usually doesn't have Mighty Bash. Then I go with either Safeguard or Mass Spell Reflection. It also depends on the enemy you're playing against, but most of the time I'm going with Safeguard, because if you use Mass Spell Reflection versus, let's say, a row and a warrior, it won't do you no good, but usually Safeguard will help you in both situations. And then I go with Avatar because it's just giving you an additional 20% of damage instantly, so you don't have to wait 6 seconds to get an additional 30% like Bloodbath. And Stormbolt, I really don't like to use Stormbolt because just Avatar gives you a massive damage increase. And then I'd say Piercing Howl. So these are the ones I use for the basic damage. Now let's go to the Battleground setup I use. So the Battleground setup I use Double Time because usually I want to charge between a lot of enemies, and then I'm going to skip Second Wind. I usually go with Disrupting Shout because, you know, when you're fighting in a group and then like all the casters stand in a side, sometimes you want to leap in there and use Disrupting Shout. So I'll keep Disrupting Shout. Then I would go with either Blade Storm or Shockwave, but usually I stay Blade Storm because 90% of the group already have stuns. And then I would go with Mass Spell Reflection because it gives all your partners. So if you have a group of 15, it will give a spell reflect for 15, which is pretty good. And then I change Avatar to Bloodbath because when I pop my damaging cooldowns and use Bladestorm, I like to use Bloodbath with it so I can snare the targets down so they would keep in range while I'm Bladestorming, so I can kill multiple targets or at least bring them to low HP. So this is my Battleground setup. Now for the control setup, which I use when I'm playing with a healer, or let's say sometimes you do that in threes, although rarely, occasionally you don't do that because most of the partners already have stuns. This is from the spellbook, like paladins or monks. So I go with Juggernaut. Juggernaut just is too good because I find myself always having stun when always having charge. I'm sorry, when I need it. But if I use double time, I might use my charges quick more often than I need, and then I'm going to have to wait for 20 seconds instead of just 12. Then I'm going to also keep second moves because I'm not going to change that. I don't like to use Disrupting Shout at all when I'm in arena. I'd go with AoE, the root, because I don't want to AoE anything there. Then I'm going to change this to Shockwave, so I can stun hopefully more than 3 targets, and then the cooldown will just be 20 seconds. So I can just stun them after the DRs right away. Then I'm going to change I'm going to keep mass spell reflection, so maybe I can reflect a hex or sheep, so the CC would stay on the enemy. And then I'm going to change Bloodbath to Stormbolt, so I can actually do more damage, or stun the focus target and then shockwave my targets. So I'll keep the whole group in pressure. And that's the basic threes talents I use. Now for the glyphs, I use Heroic Leap because it reduces your Heroic Leap cooldown by 15 seconds, and this is by far the strongest glyph I've ever seen. And then I use Shield Wall, so it gives you an additional 20% and increases its cooldown by 2 minutes. I wouldn't go with this one if I'm going into a Battleground. I might change it to, let's say, Bull Rush, which would give you 15% additional rage, but I use this because usually arena games end pretty fast, so I would need an additional 20%. I don't mind waiting 2 minutes. Anyways, I only use Shield Wall usually once per arena. So I would go with this, and then I go with Colossus Mash. It also applies Thunder Armor on your target, so I don't have to use Rage for Thunder Armor to get 3 stacks. Well, I can only use Colossus Mash and it will stack automatically. So it reduces just the time, and just keep binding Thunder Armor just to keep. But you can change Thunder Armor with, let's say, Bull Rush is pretty good, or Enrage Speed, so it will give you 20% in rage. When you range, you get 20% faster, so you can keep up with the target. And these are the glyphs I use. Now to go through my macros. I hope you can see the text over here. If you won't, I'm just going to put them on the right of the screen or on the description below. So first is my modifier macro. What it does is, if I use the keybind, I have this macro on. If I use shift with that, it's going to cast on my focus target. If not, it's going to cast on my target. The first one I have is for shatter, and then I have another banner macro. What this does is it will intervene to any banner I have around. If I don't have one down, it will cast Mocking Banner, so I can throw it down and intervene to that. I use Mocking Banner because I really don't need Mocking Banner as a spell around when I'm in PvP, so I wouldn't be wasting it. And then I have Charge, so it will cast Charge, and then if I'm close to the enemy, it's going to also use Hamstring, so I don't have to have a macro keybind for Hamstring. Then I have a similar one to that of Chatter for Disarm. Then I have another Intervene macro, which would mouse over. If I mouse over someone, it's going to intervene him. And then I have a Pummel macro. It also has the modifier for Shift for my focus target. Also has a mouse over, so if my focus target is a bit far away, I can still Pummel anyone around by mouse overing him. And then I have a Fear macro, which would fear the target, my target. If I'm going to use shift on that, it's going to, if my focus target is close enough, it's going to fear him. If not, it will automatically charge and fear him. So I don't have to have another macro for charge to charge through the target. So if I also want to just charge to my focus target, I'm going to use this keybind once, and if I use it twice, it's going to fear charge and then fear the focus target. And then I have another intervene macro. What this does is it just targets any closest friend. So maybe I don't have a banner and I can't see a close friend, I'm just going to use this so I don't have to mouse over, and then it will automatically target back your last enemy. Then I have another victory rush cooldown. I just have this on so I can cancel Bladestorm and Hand of Freedom in case they're on me. So I can use the same keybind for victory rush, which won't actually do no good if I don't have victory rush available. So I just have this so I can remove the rulers I don't need. And then I have another taunt macro. Okay, this usually taunt is for PvE, but I use taunt to taunt actually any arena pet. So for example, my healer, I'm playing versus a Beastmastery Hunter, so I can taunt his pets, so my healer can take a less damage. And then I have a Stormbolt macro. What this does is it's just similar to any focus macro. If I use this, it's going to cast Stormbolt on my focus macro, and then it's going to target my last enemy back. And then because I usually change between Bladestorm, Shockwave and Dragon Roar a lot, and also Avatar, Bloodbath and Stormbolt, I have this smart macro which whenever I change through one of these, I don't have to drag it and drop it somewhere in my keybind, so I can use it every time. So what this does, if I have Avatar, it will use Avatar. If I don't have Avatar and have Stormbolt, it will use Stormbolt. So it depends on the talents you have, and they would look like a question mark over here. It will look like a question mark until I actually add it. And so when you add it, so the first thing, I don't have it until I use it, it becomes available. And then I have this same macro for the third tier for Shockwave, Bladestorm and Dragon Roar. The other one was for Avatar, Bloodbath and Stormbolt. But you need to make sure that the name of the macro is exactly to the one right here. So I just keep it the same names I got it with. So these were the macros. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned from it, and thanks for your time.